A queen sits on the throne she bled for. 6 months later, in the book, she loses it. That is not a theory. That is written history, straight from George R. R. Martin's Fire and Blood. So when House of the Dragon Season 3, Episode 5, opened with dead city watchmen and a message calling them traitors, most fans thought they already knew who was responsible. They were wrong. And today we are going to break down exactly why. Using the show, the source material, and a few details production has quietly confirmed this week that most recap channels have not touched yet. If you are new here, this is where we treat Westeros like an actual historical event instead of just a TV show. Let's get into it. First, a quick bit of context because it matters more than usual this week. Fire and Blood is not written like a normal fantasy novel. It is written like a history textbook, compiled by fictional maesters who were not actually in the room for most of what happened. That gives the show a strange kind of freedom. Whenever the maesters got something wrong, or simply had no source for it, the show can quietly fill in the gap without technically breaking canon. We saw this earlier this season, when Alicent secretly traveled to Dragonstone to offer Rhaenyra a way back into the Red Keep. No historian would have recorded that conversation, because no historian was there. Episode 5 leans on that same trick, but this time it is not just filling in a gap. It is correcting one dot here is what the book actually says happened. After Rhaenyra takes the Iron Throne, she raises taxes and lets the City Watch enforce her rule with real brutality. The small folk of King's Landing turn on her for it. Gold Cloaks start dying in the streets, one by one, until the unrest gets so bad that Rhaenyra is forced to flee her own capital only half a year into her reign. Episode 5 sets up exactly that story. Members of the City Watch are found murdered with no witnesses. Daemon assumes the population is finally striking back, punishing the Gold Cloaks for cracking down on the graffiti mocking Rhaenyra's rule. It lines up perfectly with the book, right up until the episode's final scene. Daemon turns a corner and finds 9 bodies arranged around a table like some kind of twisted dinner party. At the center sits Lord Commander Ser Luther Largent, and above him, written for Daemon to find, are the words "a feast for traitors." According to Fabian Frankel's co-star James Norton, who plays the man actually behind this, that message was never supposed to feel random. It is a targeted message aimed at the exact men who let Rhaenyra back into the capital in the first place. This was not an uprising. This was an execution. So, who is actually pulling the strings? The answer is Ormond Hightower, Lord of Old Town, cousin to Alicent, and guardian to Rhaenyra's teenage half-brother, Daeron Targaryen. In the books, Ormond barely gets a paragraph. He is mostly just a name attached to troop movements. The show has turned him into something closer to a proper chess player, and this week we got confirmation of just how deliberate that choice was. James Norton, the actor playing Ormond, described his character in a recent interview as closer to a zealot than a general, a man who genuinely believes in Hightower superiority the way a religious fanatic believes in Scripture. That reframes everything we just watched. Ormond is not reacting to the war. He is running his own war quietly from a market town called Tumbleton, using spies and assassins instead of dragons. And there is a detail from this same episode that most recaps have skipped past entirely. Ormond gives his ward Daeron a history lesson about Maria Martell, a Dornish queen who once defeated Aegon the Conqueror not with an army, but by hiding her forces, poisoning wells, and picking off Aegon's men in the dark. If that sounds familiar, it should. It is almost exactly the method Ormond is now using against Rhaenyra. He is not just teaching Daeron history. He is showing him the blueprint for what he is doing right now, in real time, to a Targaryen queen who thinks she is dealing with an angry mob. This is the part that actually matters for where the season is heading. In Fire and Blood, Rhaenyra's downfall is framed as largely her own doing. Paranoia, cruelty, and mistreatment of the small folk cost her the crown. It is a fairly unflattering ending for a character who fought her entire life for that throne. The show appears to be rewriting that outcome in a very specific way. Rhaenyra does fear that something is watching her from the shadows, and Daemon dismisses it as guilt catching up with her. But Daemon is only half right. The unrest is real, and Rhaenyra's own harsh orders did make things worse. What he does not know yet is that a foreign enemy is actively engineering the chaos he thinks is organic. That is a meaningfully different story than the one in the book. It means Rhaenyra's fall, if it happens the same way, will not be purely a self-inflicted wound. It will be the result of someone else's campaign, dressed up to look like her own failure. That is a much more sympathetic version of Rhaenyra than Martin originally wrote. And it tells us something about where the writers want the audience's loyalty to sit heading into the final stretch of the season. While all of that is happening in the streets, Alicent is dealing with her own crisis inside the Red Keep. Her daughter Helena is pregnant, refuses to end the pregnancy, and Alicent is trying to get them both out of the castle before anyone else finds out. Their escape plan fails, but then they discover something that was not part of the plan at all. A hidden passage right next to their bed, seemingly leading straight out of the Red Keep. They take it, they shut the door behind them, and that is exactly when their luck runs out. The passage is blocked further in, Helena drops their only light source, and the door behind them cannot be reopened from the inside. By morning, the rest of the castle may simply assume the two of them escaped successfully, while in reality, they're sealed in the dark within the walls of the Red Keep. None of this happens in the book, which means we are in genuinely uncharted territory. And there is a grim detail worth mentioning. In Fire and Blood, Helena is already dead by the time Ser Luther is killed. Whatever leads to her death in the show, this moment trapped beside her mother is very likely feeding into it, whether or not it is the final cause. Two more threads are worth tracking heading into the back half of the season. Aemon Targaryen has finally woken up at Harrenhal under the care of Alice Rivers, and the two have formed an unlikely bond. Ewan Mitchell, who plays Aemond, has compared this stretch of the character's arc to a hero learning to control power responsibly, the kind of arc you'd expect from a very different kind of franchise. Whether that softer side survives what is coming is another question entirely. Meanwhile, Criston Cole is isolated in the Riverlands, sabotaging river crossings and picking fights he may not walk away from. In a recent scene, he told his own second-in-command that he is ready to die on his own terms as a warrior rather than keep retreating. That officer chose to leave with a handful of riders instead of following him further. Cole is now heading into what looks like a deliberate last stand. And that finally brings us to what's next, because HBO already dropped the trailer for Episode 6, and it points directly at the fight Cole set up. The preview teases the long-awaited Butcher's Ball from the books, with Daemon growing impatient and pushing for immediate action, asking bluntly what the cost of waiting actually is. Elsewhere, Lady Jane Eyre is heard warning of doom hanging over the Targaryen cause, and Ormond is shown coaching Daeron with a line that sums up his entire strategy so far. The patient hunter gets the kill. That line alone tells you everything about how Ormond plans to win this war. Not with dragons, with patience, misdirection, and a queen who has no idea she's being hunted at all. To sum it up, the murders in King's Landing were never a spontaneous uprising. They were a calculated high-tower operation. Rhaenyra's downfall is being rewritten as someone else's plot instead of purely her own failure. Alicent and Helena are now trapped somewhere the books never mentioned. And Episode 6 is about to bring Criston Cole's storyline to a head. 3 episodes left, and it feels like the show finally found its real final boss. If you want the next breakdown the moment Episode 6 drops, subscribe and turn on notifications, because this season is not slowing down. Let me know in the comments which character you think actually survives to the end of this season. See you in the next one.